Okay, we're recording. Brilliant. Okay, my name is Mr. Mack-Poole, and what we're going to do today, we're going to look at the Second Cold War. Okay, and between the years 1979 and 1985, and we'll look at the causes, events, and consequences of this. So, to begin with, the causes are well, the first one and the most important one really is the Soviet Afghan invasion of 1979 on Christmas Day by Leonid Brezhnev. So Brezhnev opts to invade Afghanistan. It is actually known as the Graveyard of Empires, and you would have seen recently on the news that with America withdrawing from that region, it's very mountainous, it's a very hard region to conquer. It was one of Brezhnev's I think it was his ultimate mistake. And it changed previously good relations into negative ones. Remember, from 1969 to 1979, that period was known as détente. And that was because of the two strategic arms limitation talks, SALT 1 and SALT 2, and the Helsinki Accords and ping-pong diplomacy. There was a real positivity in that time. In fact, it was thought that the Cold War was more or less over, with America really recognizing the de facto Eastern European borders of the Soviet bloc. However, this is what we call a turning point in US and USSR superpower relations, because Brezhnev really miscalculated how strong Americans would feel about this. After all, Afghanistan is an important country itself because of where it is situated, very near to the Middle East, where America had a massive influence over Middle Eastern European oil. Also, because of this, we have the Carter Doctrine. Now, Jimmy Carter is not exactly known for being tough on the Soviets, but he issues this doctrine where he says that if the Soviet Union tries to go near the Middle East, that would be really an attack on the USA itself. So he's really saying hands off the oil. And although he's remembered as quite a weak American leader with regard to the USSR, especially in comparison to Ronald Reagan, he does get tough here. And Soviet stagnation, so an economic cause. I'm primarily a socio-economic historian. And really, the Soviet Union's economy has a period of stagnation. So this is one of the reasons for the the Second Cold War. And it's another reason. Another reason is also American growth in the face of that. So we've got US economic growth and Soviet stagnation. So this causes, in part, the Second Cold War, because America can really start throwing its weight around. And that's what they do, especially with Ronald Reagan being elected. Now, Ronald Reagan really is a Cold War titan, and let me elaborate as to why. He is vociferously, passionately, and wholeheartedly against the communist system. He detests it, and he's not just like Truman, who also detested communism. He's not just satisfied to contain communism, he's going to push it right back. Okay, he's very determined to do that. He calls the Soviet Union an evil empire, and when he visits Britain and Queen Elizabeth and Margaret Thatcher, who would be one of his key allies in the Second Cold War, he says that Marxism, Leninism will end up on the ash heap of history. He says it's toast, it's done, capitalism has won the argument, no one likes living in a communist system. Also, he initiates his Reagan Doctrine. So there's a lot of doctrines on this course: Truman Doctrine, Brezhnev Doctrine, Carter Doctrine, and now we have the Reagan Doctrine. And it basically is that not only will he support anti-communist regimes across the world to stop communism being established, he will also fund anti-communist regimes in already existing communist states. So this really contravenes the kind of happy relationship that was established under the Helsinki Accords and that recognition of Eastern Europe being under Soviet domination. Also, he initiates SDI, which is known as Star Wars, and this is quite an interesting piece of history because, satellites and lasers, pew pew, that's quite cool, right? So really this is an attempt to really not accept the doctrine of MAD, mutually assured destruction. Who wants a stalemate in this Cold War? Ronald Reagan really wants to be the winner. So he wants to have a satellite system which would make Soviet nuclear missiles defunct and have no impact, whilst he would be able to himself use his nuclear missiles against the Soviet Union. So he's really trying to get a distinct advantage in the arms race. And he also increases his spending on the military because his economy really goes up and away. And the reason for this boom is because of Reaganomics. So what he does, it's called the Laffer curve. So he works out the perfect level of taxation, and he reduces taxation on the rich. Now, I know you might think that's crazy, but what that does, it actually encourages the rich to spend the money which they've got, okay, and invest it, okay, in wealth creation. So the American economy goes through a real boom. But at the same time, the Soviet economy is stagnating. It can't compete. And the reason it can't compete is because they can't use these capitalist methods which Reagan has used to create this massive boom in the American economy. So the consequences. Well, the consequence of all this pressure is that when Gorbachev comes to power in 1985, he determines that they need a new way of thinking, okay? And it's perestroika and glasnost, or glasnost and perestroika, as it's known in that order. And glasnost means transparency and more democracy, and perestroika is basically some light capitalist reforms in the Soviet Union. Also, well, as we discussed, the American economy outstrips the USSR's, and really, the USA is ahead by 1985 in this Cold War. The USA is dominating the agenda. The USA is doing as Reagan wants to do, push the Soviet Union right back. Now, it's a shame that this question ends in 1985 because there's some glorious stuff which happens later on in the 1980s, such as the fall of the Berlin Wall, and in 1991, the ultimate implosion of the Soviet Union. However, for all intents and purposes, this question is directed from 1917 to 1985, and that great stuff you don't really get to write about. So the ultimate real huge consequences are Gorbachev's reforms of glasnost and perestroika. And with that, I'll take this video to an end.